Cliffhangers are hard. To some, it could seem like you had no idea how to end your story, so you kicked the can down the road. I personally don't mind them if the whole season has enough substance. I fell off The Walking Dead because AMC clearly cared too much about cliffhangers. They can also create a lot of fear for the next season. How could they possibly live up to this? Throw in production issues and a writer's strike, and those fears grow tenfold. One of those things alone is enough to end a show, even if it doesn't get it canceled. Historically, this has killed high concept dramas, which was why I was so worried for Severance Season 2 when this is the cliffhanger they left us on.
He's alive!
If you couldn't tell based off of my previous video on the subject, Severance is my favorite show on TV right now. Everything about it was truly amazing, which is why I was so excited for season 2, and why I was excited for its weekly releases. It had the room to breathe. I greatly prefer that release schedule for TV, which gave me this idea on how to structure the review. Once a week for the past 10 weeks, I recorded a quick little roundup for each episode, where I talked about where I think the show was going, what worked and didn't work within the episodes, before jumping into my final thoughts. And instead of uploading it weekly and flooding everyone with videos, I want to show my progression throughout the season with this one video. I cannot tell you how much I miss having weekly discussions for shows, and this is my argument for why it's better. Stop making art disposable. And I think watching the show through this weekly structure helped me crack the code on Severance because I've just spent so much time thinking about it. That's for the conclusion though. Let me know your favorite parts of the season down below, or if you ended up watching it alongside this video. Seriously, if you watched an episode and then came to the video to watch me talk about it, please let me know because that would actually make my day. Also, thank you for 1,000 subs. I wanted to hit it before the end of March and I passed it not that long ago. I wasn't expecting to reach that goal, so I'm really happy I did. Without further ado, here is me from like 8 weeks ago. Good news, they did not fumble after the cliffhanger, behind the scenes drama, and a writer's strike. We're so fucking back, boys. My favorite moments from the episode was the entire episode. It was a phenomenal premiere. Mark running through the hallways and getting lost. Fantastic. I love how he most likely got lost because he doesn't know how to get to that wing from the elevators, only from macro data. A little weird that it was green screened though. Like, it was kind of throwing me off. I get that it had to be done because there is no complete set for the entire floor, only segments. Even the fact that it was making me feel uneasy works because it's the point of that floor. And it was a fantastic one-shot anyways. Dylan is still the GOAT, and his chat with Irving was hard to watch. That was a very raw scene of a friend trying to talk another down from the ledge.
Buy me a favorite perk.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm going to cry. I love how different Mark was acting. He's a changed man, and I'm so excited to see him continue to evolve throughout the season. Lumen using Miss Cobel as a fall guy and saying, "Oh, we're going to do better. We're so sorry about that rogue agent acting in bad faith," while not addressing the environment that allowed that craziness to fester, is so perfect. It's classic corporate American deflection at its finest, especially because they only canned her because she lied to the board. To Lumen, that was her only offense. And Milkshake in this episode is even more unsettling than he was before. I think where they started the season was perfect. Anything other than right when the Innie Mark woke up would have been way worse. One of the smartest moves with the episode was not showing us Audi Mark. I straight up did not want to see him in this episode at all. With those quick points out of the way, there's 3 main topics I want to talk about from this episode. 1. The child. When Miss Wong was in the trailer, I thought Lumen severed a kid, which is so messed up. But considering she remembers her previous job,
before this, I was a crossing guard,
and she works in Milchek's old job, I think she's just some exec's kid. Which could have been done because they can't find anyone else to work for Lumen, as public perception is at an all-time low. Assuming it has been 5 months, I'm not going to believe that until we see Audi Mark's POV. I also think it's because Innies might be less likely to get violent with a child as they are with an adult. Even then, Lumen is not above putting a child in harm's way to protect them. The main thing that's been bothering me for the past 2 days, and is one of the reasons why I came up with this format for a season review, is Helly. I don't think that was Helly at all in the episode. I think it was Helena. As soon as she lied, I was so sussed out. Think about it. It's possible to have the innies be out. So who says you can't have the outies be in? First, why would she lie? It could be possible that she didn't want the others to hate her for who her outie is, but to me that would lead to a more contrived conflict. Most times stuff like that in shows would have been resolved if people just talked. But it's not just that, I feel like there's way more to it. Let's look at the lie itself. She was alone watching nature documentaries in her apartment and she went and talked to a gardener. The gardener is such a weird detail. Irv does question why a gardener is working at night, but they quickly move on from it. Why is the gardener working at night? Maybe the person talking is from a rich family and has gardeners working at their house 24/7. Or maybe the rich girl doesn't know when the hell gardeners work. Why is the gardener gardening in the middle of winter like it was 5 months ago? What she said about her outie sounds like a perfectly crafted persona for somebody who would support the innies, or stereotype of someone who would support the innies coming from the mind of a rich person. This next one I didn't even take in. My friend I watched the show with brought it up. She said the nature documentary was boring, but it's safe to assume that something like that would be interesting to the innies because they've never seen the outside world, which is why earlier on in the episode, maybe from Arrested Development asked about the sky. I think that was done to show the audience that the innies do have some interest in the outside world. So it's unlikely that she would think it was boring. One thing that really susses me out is why Lumen would let Helena go back. I feel like they would have nothing to gain from that. I saw online that people was talking about how when she uses the computer, she misses the power button like it's the first time she turned it on. I need to see her work more before I can confirm the computer part though. The most damning thing for me is that I can confirm every other person is their innie. We follow Mark throughout the majority of the episode, so we know it's his innie's POV. Dylan and Milchuk get a scene away from the others, so we know it's him. Unless they were lying to the audience in that scene. Irving, we don't get to see alone on screen, but he comes down the elevator doing exactly what he was doing at the end of season 1, which means nothing to the characters, but something to us. If it was his outie working to help Lumen, why would he be in the same state the audience last saw his innie in? And based off of the very little that we know about Irv's outie, I doubt he would help Lumen. Helly, we only saw with the other characters, and there is no definitive proof that she is Helly, not Helena. I don't know, man. I think it's kind of sus that I can reasonably prove every character excluding her. One of the biggest points I saw to her being Helly is how she talks about her outie to Mark, which is fair. Helly would have that much smoke for Helena. But do you know who would equally hate the other version of herself? Helena. Helly tried to Persona 3 both of them last season and attempted to tank her family's entire company. Helena definitely hates Helly, so why would she go back? Especially when Lumen has so much to gain from sending Helena undercover. Think she can keep a pulse on what the innies are doing as they trust her. Hey guys, the cameras and microphones are gone. Tell me your good friend Helly all of your plans to take down Lumen and find Gemma. And she can make them distrust each other, which I think is Lumen's goal. They are going to divide and conquer this innie revolution. Milchuk already gave Dylan a thing to hide from everyone, which can be used against him. And then they got Helena pushing any narrative to the others that Lumen wants. Some hardcore gaslighting is going to happen to the characters, and it's already happening to me, which is the brilliant part of this show. I think the writers have created the perfect environment for distrust, because we can't trust what we see, or honestly, anyone other than Mark, Dylan, and Irving. Even then, we don't know if what they're seeing is the truth. I think Helena's main goal, though, is to get Mark's innie to not focus on finding Gemma, which is why she says this.
So technically, strictly speaking, she's not your wife.
Lumen knows the innies like each other and could end up baby goating it up in the future. Mark's outie is definitely going back to find his wife, but he can't control what his innie does. Helena is able to waste Mark's time without Mark knowing. Lastly, I think macro data refinement has something to do with memories, which could be why the numbers are scary. Maybe they're like like bad memories or something. I don't know, memories seem like pretty big data. The reason I'm thinking about it now is because whatever we saw Mark working on was clearly affecting Gemma. I hope whatever we get out of next episode is the exact opposite as this one. I would love it if it was an Audi only episode, but honestly, I wouldn't be too torn up about it. With that out of the way, let's move on to episode 2. Oh hey, will you look at that? It hasn't been 5 months. So that any revolution paper is definitely a lie to manipulate them. Episode 2 is everything I wanted it to be. No innies, just outies. After the premiere, one of the first things I said other than I swear that's not Helly is I don't want to see the innies in episode 2. With how the show is designed, you need 2 episodes to follow up the finale. 1 episode following one version of the characters, and the other episode following the other. So I'm so happy that's what we got. I've been waiting so long to see how Mark would react to what his innie told everyone in the finale, and I loved the denial. And what he says later on in the episode was heartbreaking. I feel like in a lot of shows when a character dies, they kind of skip over the parts that he talked about. Through his voice alone, you feel the pain that he had to go through when he identified her, and when he had to call his in-laws and tell them their daughter is dead. That scene was so sad. Like, obviously, Devin is right, like, in every single way, but I can't blame Mark for acting the way he did. Keep in mind, this is something that destroyed him so much. He got severed to avoid thinking about her. And he said this in his interview.
In your intake interview, you cited her death as a primary motivator for severing. You said since she died, every day feels like a year, that you felt like you were choking on her ghost.
After a season of him being depressed but not really talking about it, finally seeing his true pain on display was hard. It was nice finally getting to see the other outies too. Dylan's door interview was so funny. Much needed levity considering everything Mark was going through this episode, but by the end of the scene, it stopped being funny. Irv, we didn't get to see a lot of, but he's clearly cooking something. I mean, we know he has been investigating Lumen, so I'm really curious to see where it goes. And whatever, I don't remember his name, Christopher Walken's character is up to. Bert. It's Bert. Helena's section, I loved. How it's shot is the best in the episode. All of the shots of the building work so well because we are outsiders looking at this version of Helena. Like her standing in the building while Milchek was riding back in was a good shot. And some of the close-ups on her are really good. It's art. It's just art, man. Every frame's a painting. The cult vibes were cranked up to 100 during her scenes. I'm thinking maybe this guy was the one standing behind Mark after the long one take from the premiere. I'm not sure if his height or body type line up though. I have to run it back while editing the video. I'm really interested in what Cobel's role is going to be, but obviously the main thing I'm dying to talk about is that one guy who got fired because of Mark. Based off of the brief interactions we got from both versions of him, it really proves how different the innies and outies are. Buddy's innie would not use that kind of language at all. Okay, seriously, I think I got my confirmation that it's Helena down there now. I have 3 reasons why. An internal one, an external one, and the confirmation. First off, the external, which was not the order that I just listed those things in. Oops. We now have the exact reason why they let Helena go back down there. Whatever Mark is working on is too important, and if he demands Heliar to finish the job, he is getting Heliar. It's cool getting a bit more on what macro data is doing. I'm really enjoying them drip feeding us what exactly is going on down there. Second, the internal reason. Obviously, Helena hates what Heli did and is going hard on damage control. Her apology video was perfect celebrity BS. Other than that, how she looked at Heli kissing Mark was very interesting. They really focused on it. It feels like there's a layer of jealousy there. Like she's never had any meaningful, intimate relationship in her life. And as a buddy of mine mentioned, being the daughter of the head of a weird cult-like company like Lumen, it might be hard to do so. Honestly, my initial vibe went further. Like it's her first kiss in a while, or possibly ever. Well, like it was the first time she felt any love in her life, and she didn't get to experience it. But we don't know enough about her to make that call. This is purely me speculating based off of the look she gave and how Lumen is structured. At the very least, I don't think she's made a connection with anyone like Heli did with Mark. So that could be a motivation for for her to go down there. Either to spend time with this man that one part deep down inside her has an intimate connection with, or that hatred for her innie could be fueling that motivation to go down there and destroy the person that version of her cares for the most. And now, the third reason. The confirmation. I may or may not have ran this one scene back 5 times after I finished the episode, or yelled, "That's not Helly," at my TV at 2 a.m. So the second last scene in the episode is the macro data crew going to work before they all meet up for the first time since the finale. Mark enters the elevator, we hear the noise that plays when they switch, and the camera swings around to show Dylan doing the same. He enters, we hear the noise, and the camera swings around to show Irving. For Irv, the noise I found the hardest to hear. But again, considering the banging on the elevator door from the premiere, it's his innie. But then the camera swings around to show Helly. She enters, it lingers on the door, and it fades out without playing the noise. That's not her, man. There's no way that's her, and I love how the show is teasing it. Last week, I said I needed to see her entering the elevator to confirm if it was her. And what do we get in this episode? A series of examples of what we should hear when they switch. And then Helly doesn't get the noise despite the fact that her shot on the elevator is the longest of the 4. Man, that was the smoking gun I was looking for. I was seeing a very clear visual and audible language during this scene, and they break it with the one character I'm sus on. Or if it is her, I love how this show is setting up the distrust. Oh my god, this episode was perfect. I am so excited for episode 3, Who is Alive? Based off of that name, I think I'm going to love it. That one got weird. My small takeaways from the episode. The goat people are really weird. I think it's because they interact so much with goats. The cult vibes are getting bigger and bigger with each episode. I'm not sure what Miss Cobel is thinking right now. It could be someone who has had their cult programming completely shaken and is now questioning their choices. That's the main reason I thought up as to why she wouldn't want to go through with the meeting. There's so much mystery around this side of Lumen, it's hard to really figure out motivations. But her talk with Helena was so good. A lot of banger lines in there. A lot of shade towards Milchek from Cobel, which was very surprising. My buddy was saying that Milchek could have been raised in Lumen too, so that line about being born in Lumen is not just targeted at Helena. That can also explain why Miss Huang is a child too. Raised in Lumen could mean through family or through experiments. I'm not sure if they're growing people through experiments, but you know what? I can't disprove it. It was nice finally getting a name for that elevator.
How do you know about the exports hall?
But we can't really start speculating about what it is because exports hall doesn't really give a whole lot. It could be a secret exit out of Lumen that they transport goods and people through, or it's an underground city prison that they're keeping people in. It could also be a lab where they mess with people's memories or like clone or grow people. It could easily be all 3 or none of it. We don't know what could possibly be down there, and I hope we find out soon. I don't want to know next episode though. I'll get to that later. But like, Irving definitely had his memory reset down there at some point. I think it's why both versions of him have some bleed over when it comes to the elevator. They did something to him for some reason, and that's why his Audi is investigating them. Dylan, on the other hand, is being played so hard by Lumen right now. I still think they are trying to divide the innies, so they can't get anything done outside of Cold Harbor, which is why they're now giving Dylan what he wanted since the last bit of the first season, his family. It must be why he was so locked in at the beginning of the episode and decided to not help the search. He wants to work towards the family night. I believe his wife saying that his Audi is a bit of a fuck up was done for a reason, because it's going to motivate any Dylan to work even harder. If his Audi can't hold a job, any Dylan is the one who needs to pull through for his family. Family is going to be a huge theme for Dylan this season, and Lumen is going to exploit it, which is why there's seemingly being so nice to him. Also, I'm really happy they included a scene with Audi Dylan and his wife, because I wouldn't have believed it was her until they showed her on the outside. When she started talking, me and my buddy were like, is that the same voice that we heard on the phone in the previous episode? I'm not sure. One thing that's been a theme across this video so far with me is the debate around Helly. Most likely because I called it Frame 1 and I really want to be right about it. I don't really have a lot to say about it in this episode. That one scene with her and Mark in the hallway was kind of very weird and uncomfortable. Ignoring Mark's half of it, because I think he was acting that way based off of the vibes he was getting from her. It wasn't I want to kiss you, but the whole severed dynamic plus your dead wife not being dead thing is making it weird. The vibes were very similar to Helena watching Helly and Mark kiss. Also, interesting how late Helena was at the office that day. It was like she was at a meeting or something, possibly about what she was doing on the severed floor that day. You know, something that important could cause her to stay for a couple more hours. But yeah, the hallway scene was the only time I saw her slipping this episode. The big thing from the episode is Mark getting reintegrated. I did not know that's what the episode was building to, especially when the majority of what Mark is doing in this episode is trying to burn who is alive into his eyes. I thought it was a brilliant plan. It's also funny to imagine how terrifying that would be for any Mark if it worked. Just blink and you see text saying who is alive. But Mark reintegrating always felt like an endgame move, not a season 2 episode 3 move. I found it to be a rash decision. The second someone on the outside confirms that your wife is alive, you're going to do the thing that led to the death of your coworker? Just because the girl who you've seen murder someone said she got better at it? But then I remembered his wife's death motivated him to do the opposite, so it checks out. The very little we get to see from it was so awesome. Visually, it was stunning. Truly expert filmmaking on display. When I said I don't want answers about Exports Hall next episode, it's because I want the majority of it to be Mark reintegrating. Just dive into his past memories and really examine who he is. I believe it was also the first time the credits were on a white background. I wonder if they're all going to end on a white screen now, or if they only did it as a part of the reintegration. But that's besides the point. You will now be hearing from me 1 week from now after I have watched episode 4.
What's happening? Where are we? I have no fucking idea.
So we're doing this now? Sure. Okay. Gonna skip that whole reintegration thing, eh? I gotta say, there's not a single universe out there where this is how I expected episode 4 to start. I was genuinely confused. But I was right about Helly. Frame 1, baby, let's go.
We got a #1 victory royale.
That was honestly one of the weirdest episodes of television that I've ever seen. I really enjoyed it, but I kind of feel like I don't have a whole lot to say about it. But maybe watching 3 episodes of Invincible before going into this had something to do with it. Or maybe because there was a lot of interpersonal drama that I enjoyed, but didn't really leave me a lot to comment on outside of small things like Helena really went for the jugular here.
Hey. We all know Irving's upset because he can't ever see Bert again.
One thing I did notice with this episode relates to the book that they had to read. I feel like it must be paralleling some religious text. I've seen people online give different theories about which religion or cult inspired Lumen. I feel like this book is the giveaway, but I'm straight up not educated on different religions or cults, so I can't figure out the inspiration without doing some reading. If someone is educated on the topics, please let me know what you think it is. It's something I've always noticed in this show, but I don't know enough about the subject to give an answer. I loved Helena's and Irving's dynamic in this episode. Dylan has been the GOAT of the group since he stood on business in the finale, but Irv has claimed that title this episode. He was on her trail the whole episode, and he was focusing on all the interactions that I was. Irving was asking exactly what I was thinking, and the scene where he was threatening to kill Helena was so good. I was really on edge during it. At first, I thought she was going to kill him to keep the secret. Much like Mark's reintegration, I thought Helena being outed would come later, but Irving took a bullet to save his friend. It was a very noble sacrifice, and the look he gave Milchek was so good. This is likely the last time we're going to see any Irv for a very long time, or the whole series. And what a bang to go out on. We're probably going to see a lot of outie Irving's investigations now. I think a Helena redemption arc is possible now too. This is definitely a very traumatic experience for her. She got to see how much the Innies cared for each other, and that can reinforce how they are people. Helena and Mark sleeping together together, way too close to the space heater I might add, could help with that too. If the innies are capable of that level of intimacy, does that not make them people? If we believe what Helena said in season 1, she doesn't see them as people. Also, I think I'm right about her more personal reason to go back in. She never felt that close to anyone. Her innie forged a connection that she wanted to feel. The main driver for the Helena redemption arc is when she said this.
Like who I was on the outside. I was ashamed.
Deep down, I think she hates being an Egan. One thing I hope they address is how icky her sleeping with Mark feels. This is something I didn't really take in until I was writing this section. Mark thinks he's sleeping with Helly, not Helena. So that's kind of like a twin pretending to be her sister to sleep with her boyfriend, maybe? And then there's the whole 2 minds in 1 body thing, cause who knows if Helly would be alright with this happening, or outie Mark. Even though I was watching the scene with the mindset that she was Helena, I didn't really take in the whole conversation around severing into account. Mark's little flash of Gemma, I'm really happy they included because I was waiting for something about reintegration to pop up. I guess it might be a slow process to merge the 2 minds. Maybe that's another reason why Irv gets those weird flashes. Whatever the process is for resetting an innie could be like the reintegration process. And maybe that one girl Mark has been talking to used to work in exports hall, which is why she knows Gemma is alive. Wait, hold up. I think I'm cooking something right now. If I'm remembering correctly, she said that reintegration is like syncing 2 out of sync bands.
Waves aren't in sync. Not yet, anyway. That's what we're here to do.
Maybe her job was deleting the innie band and replacing it with a new one. Maybe Lumen's ultimate goal is to get as many severed workers as possible, and then deleting the outies, leaving them with the perfect enslaved workforce. I'm assuming the only people they would do that with are innies who drank all of the Kool-Aid. So that woman disagreed with what they were doing and left Lumen to figure out reintegration. I don't know, I feel like that's also a good cause that can push her to kill someone. I'm pretty confident that Lumen is doing something along those lines. At the very least, there is definitely memory erasure stuff happening at the other side of that elevator, and that she was involved and that process relates to reintegration. We really need to see what's on the other side of Export Hall. That dream Irving had was fairly similar to reintegration hallucinations, with things from the office in locations that they're currently in. It hasn't gotten as trippy with the cuts back and forth though, but that could just be a difference between resetting memory and reintegration. I need to look at that scene again while I'm editing so I can get a clean look at the screen. Okay, now I'm really going to need an episode on the export hall or Mark's reintegration, because I need an answer on that real quick. The final thing I want to talk about is a theory that my buddy saw a lot of people repeating online. Some seem to think that they weren't actually outside and that they were in a simulation or a holodeck or something. I believe it relies on 2 things having power despite the fact that they were outside. Batteries exist, and before anybody comes at me by saying, how can a battery power a TV? Or if it was a generator, wouldn't we be able to see it? It couldn't be that small. I think a small generator or a strong enough battery to power a TV is more so in the realm of possibility than a holodeck. People have also been saying, why would the outies agree to do this and why would Lumen let it happen? Dylan can't say no because he needs the job. The other 2 want to play along with Lumen to not draw attention, and Helena is very high up the ladder. And I don't think I have to explain why Helena would want to go with Lumen's plan. I think this whole thing is more so a sign of Milchek's incompetence. The holodeck theory feels a bit too close to jumping the shark, so I don't know how much I like it. One thing I feel like a lot of people are overlooking is why would they deactivate Irv's severed chip while he was on their mysterious super secret holodeck? You think they would wait until he was off of the severed floor or wherever it is to do it, especially because they really don't like outies and innies interacting. There are other inconsistencies that people have been pointing out, but I don't think I agree with their basic premise to begin with. Doesn't really matter because I moved on to what Lumen could be planning while still thinking about Mark's reintegration. Also, I feel like Helly's going to be really interesting over the rest of the season. Because they did the reveal so early, it's possible that they can just keep swapping them throughout the season without us knowing. Realistically, we can get Helly for 2 episodes and then back to Helena. And I think that distrust is going to be following her for a very long time. So let's follow this cliffhanger and move on to episode 5.
You arranged an outdoor retreat and team-building occurrence.
Hey, would you look at that? They don't have a holodeck, and Milchek is just incompetent. The first little bit of this episode was them touching on things that I felt they really needed to address in this one. Reintegration takes a lot longer than I was expecting, which is why we only really got one quick flash of it during the Orbo. And they made it very clear that it was going to be Helly on the severed floor and not Helena. Basically, every single interaction between the innies at this episode was really good, but I hated seeing them fight. Good job on the drama, guys. The scene in Milchek's office has become one of my favorites in the whole series. Helly's pure confusion and disgust at Helena pretending to be her.
Wait. Are you saying that she was down here? As me?
Dylan's genuine concern for Innie Irving.
Where is Irving? Yeah, where is he?
I'm so confused.
Answer my question!
Excuse me.
And Mark's general attitude.
Wow, some actual honesty.
It's all so good. Like, I don't think I can do the scene justice. Go watch it again. I'm really happy that the innies are treating it like Innie Irv was murdered by Lumen, because he is basically dead. Hell, what Milchek was saying when they killed him was basically something that I thought was called the second death, but I think it goes by another name. It's a concept that humans die twice. Our first death is our actual death, and the second death happens when there's no one alive who remembers us. For outies, it could be decades after their death for it to happen. But for innies, especially those who were terminated like Irv, it basically happens every day after the innies that knew them clock out and forget about them. Only a very small group of people know that Innie Irv existed, which is why I'm happy that Dylan took the termination as seriously as he did. Innie Irv is dead, and very few people will know about him. But to the audience, Irving isn't dead. We know his outie, and I'm dying to know more about what he's doing. I want to know where they're going to take the Irving-Bert relationship, but man, I wish they didn't interrupt that phone call. We also got to see a lot of disdain the Lumen higher-ups have for innies, which was disgusting.
You shouldn't let them have a funeral. It makes them feel like people.
One thing that makes me feel better about the innies fighting is seeing Milchek getting absolutely rolled all episode. He is straight up not having a good time this season, and I am here for it. I think it's funny because he was such a threatening presence in the first season. Now, he's become the least threatening thing on the planet. Incompetent middle management. Even a literal teenager was wrecking him. At least it seems like we're going to get the old Milchek back now, and he's definitely going to be holding those special privileges over Innie Dylan now. You know, I think I just realized where Milchek's incompetence was coming from this season. He, much like a lot of the people in the higher positions at Lumen, are kind of inherently evil. So when he was trying to act like a nice guy, it just wasn't working for him because that's not him. And if we are going to get last season's Milchek, I have a feeling he's going to start standing on business next episode. We didn't see a whole lot about Exports Hall this episode, but I like the little bit of teases that we did get. I have a feeling they're going to be revealing something about it soon. Same thing goes for Cold Harbor because they once again reinforced how important it is. I don't think I've mentioned it in the video yet, but Rickon has been acting in the most Rickon way all season. I still don't know what the plan is there. I think they might be trying to get him to write new Lumen Gospel or something because his words really reached out to the innies last season. It's obviously another way to control the innies, but the plotline is kind of just there right now. Him selling out to Lumen is so predictable though. Like nothing this man has done all season has surprised me because it's just so in line with his character. And Devin is still the most base character in the show. I will never understand why she married Rickon. The main thing I want to talk about from this episode is the lead character. Shocking, I know. There are a lot of feelings that he's clearly grappling with. He really feels betrayed by Helena's actions. Good. Pretty sure her pretending to be Helly and sleeping with you is SA. I would like the show to really confront that at some point. And tying those feelings with how being severed works leads to very good interpersonal drama between them. Because Helly didn't betray them. It was another part of her that she has zero control over that betrayed them. But the fact that she could be Helena at any time is something that's hard to ignore for Mark. Again, that's why it's great that they told us it's going to be Helly from now on. But clearly Helena still has some feelings for Mark. So while her redemption arc seems less likely because of
They're fucking animals.
Yeah, that. If I am right about Lumen's plan, and they are able to delete or replace bands and severed workers' minds, I think the Helena redemption could be letting Helly take over. I don't think I've mentioned that latter part of their plan yet. I've been thinking about their grand plan over the last week, and one of my buddies has been saying since like season 1 that immortality is something that the Egans want to achieve, and that got me thinking maybe they're going to achieve that with the severed chips by replacing the Audi bands with Egan bands. So instead of the plan being making every Audi a part of the Egan cult, some of them would be made Egans themselves. I don't know, just spitballing here. If deleting a band is possible, I don't see why it's impossible to replace one. I hope Mark isn't getting too sick too. Given what happened with Petey, I am very worried about him. And the end of the episode, I think, is one of the saddest moments in the entire series. This is the first time that Audi Mark has seen Gemma in a very long time, and his reaction, perfect. This season is ramping up nicely, so let's move on to episode 6. This was a great episode. It was mostly really good interactions between characters. I don't remember the name of the program that Milchek brought up.
You cannot graduate from this fellowship until I have deemed you wintertide material.
Yeah, that one. But I'm really happy he mentioned it. It explains a question I've had since episode 1.
Why are you a child?
And it gives some weight to what Harmony was saying about being raised in Lumen or whatever a few episodes ago. Where did she go? She truly dipped, eh? I assumed she would come back by the end of the season, but I'm starting to doubt it. Anyways, I enjoyed the very little bit we got of Gloves Off Milchek. I feel like next episode, he might start swinging. Dylan's scenes with his wife were so funny to me, because it really seems like any Dylan is going to steal his wife from himself. It's such a bizarre dynamic. There's no way she lied because she isn't developing feelings for any Dylan. Him asking if his Audi was a fuck up was really foreshadowing this. Irving's dinner with Bert really brought in some interesting religious philosophy into being severed. Their pastor saying that innies can go to heaven even if the Audis go to hell is a fun perspective on the whole thing. Makes me really wonder what Bert did that made both him and his husband believe that he is going to hell. There's a skeleton there that I think we are overlooking, as their religious leader believes they are different souls that would receive their own judgment. I also found it interesting that they specified what kind of church they go to instead of just saying church. As you may know by this point in the video, I am unsure what Lumen's doctrine is meant to parallel. I know it's trying to critique something. Doing some light Googling on the subject, people online seem to say it's either one of two religions or a cult. I don't know enough about the three things that people are suggesting it could be, which is why I haven't made up my mind on the matter. I believe 2 weeks ago for me, I said that the stories during the Orbo could be the smoking gun, so mentioning a Lutheran church specifically could either support that or be a red herring. I wrote hearing in my script. Or it's a way to give more depth to the characters than saying church would. So again, someone more educated than me on religion, feel free to sound off in the comments because I have no idea what I'm talking about here. I had to Google if Lutheran churches were even a thing in Canada. I did not know it was a thing until the beginning of this year. Once again, the big thing I want to talk about with this episode is Mark. It's crazy how the main character keeps getting involved in the most important things each episode. First off, let's talk about Mark and Helly. The show is doing a really good job of tackling how messed up Helena pretending to be Helly while sleeping with Mark was. She violated both of them by doing that, and their responses have been very real. Seeing them process what happened in the last 2 episodes were tough to watch. I'm happy they were able to talk it out, but like, guys, stop having unprotected sex? A baby is going to lead to so much drama given who Helena is, especially because who would be considered the mother? Would it be dictated by who was in control at conception or at birth? I do not know. Having Mark sleep with both of them is a great way to bury that question because there's no way to prove that first one. You know what? I'm taking that back. Keep having unprotected sex. That sounds like it's going to lead to some good drama. Because, you know, there isn't enough of that going around right now. Just throw a baby into the mix. Fuck it. I'm calling it right now, Sunday, February 23rd at 4:45 p.m. The season is going to end with a positive pregnancy test. Mark and Helena's talk in the restaurant was a great scene too. She did confirm what I was saying back in episode 2. She has never made an intimate connection with anyone. That's why she joked about Mark meeting her dad.
He'd be the first.
Calling Gemma Hannah was also very interesting, but IMDb only has her listed as Miss Casey, and I'm not going to rewatch the entire series to confirm that. Also, why do you know so much about her death, Helena? Are you aware of some plan that involves her and Mark? That's clearly what Mark was thinking, considering he went on to flood the chip this episode. I didn't even know that was possible. Get that brain hole off of my screen, please. Normally, I'm good with gore, but I did not like seeing that hole. All the reintegration stuff this episode was still really good, and it's all moving at a faster pace than I was expecting. I love the cut from when he was at work to his basement. There were a lot of really well done shots this episode. Can we get a reintegration episode already? They've been teasing me with some really good filmmaking, and I just want an episode of that. Seriously, I loved that one transition. It is easily one of the best in the whole series. And I think that's all that I have to say. So let's move on to episode 7, where it's most likely going to be one I really enjoy, but it's not going to be the reintegration episode that I've been waiting for. So that was like one of the best episodes of the series. We can all agree on that, right? I don't think I'm saying that because we finally got the reintegration episode. I'm saying it because it was the reintegration and Gemma episode. Should have figured those two would have gone hand in hand, but I'm happy I didn't. Interlacing Gemma thinking about Mark while Lumen is putting her through hell with Mark's memories going haywire was brilliant. I think this was everything I wanted out of this episode. First off, making Mark look like he did on Parks and Rec, hilarious. Their backstory during the first few scenes were so sweet, which made the later parts way sadder. Knowing what their story leads to made those sad beats hit way harder, especially because after the loss, Gemma ended up on Lumen's radar. Well, that and the blood drive. There is clearly something they want out of her blood. I just can't get over how sad things were for both of them in this episode. Like, remove Lumen from the situation and their backstory is still very traumatic. I didn't like the parts where they were bickering. I get why they were, but it was still very sad to watch. At least we got to see those cards finally show up. Lumen is definitely out here recruiting for something. I feel like Gemma is a character that they needed to do a really good job with. If she was someone the audience didn't like, it would be hard to keep them invested in Mark's struggle to find her and hers to get out. Also, it would have been really easy for them to make her a blank slate damsel in distress with not a whole lot going on. Her being nothing more than a generic love interest for the lead was a fear of mine after season 1, but Gemma is pretty awesome. I hope now that we've finally seen her, we get to see a lot more of her. It's really important to show her escape happening from both sides. There are two things I want to talk about this episode in relation to overarching stuff. First off, Cobel's possible comeback. I was starting to doubt that we would ever see her again, so I'm happy they teased it a bit. I'm not sure if it will be next episode. I think it's going to really depend on Mark's condition. And 2, what the hell are they doing to Gemma? It seems clear that Lumen wants to make every tedious, sad, hard, whatever part of life something that people don't have to experience by severing everyone so only innies have those experiences. Much like how that one lady from the first season was severed during childbirth. And we see that within this episode. Gemma is put through a bunch of unpleasant scenarios, but each one it's a different version of her. And I'm really happy with the first one. She makes a comment about how she was just here, so we know without a doubt there are many innies inside of her.
But it's been 6 weeks.
I was just here.
So who knows how many Gemmas there are? And they range from going to the dentist, being on a plane, to writing thank you notes. That last one is something Flashback Mark mentions he hates doing. I don't know how Gemma's blood relates to it. What if they're trying to put Helly inside of her? Getting a bit ahead of myself right now. But that could be why Mark is very important. So all of this is assuming like my body snatching, I guess, theory is right, that Lumen wants to replace bands in people's brains with the bands of Egans to achieve immortality. So maybe Gemma and Helena have similar blood types, and for some reason Lumen might want Mark to be involved with Helena. So maybe Cold Harbor relates to Helena taking over Gemma's body. Honestly, so far, that's like the one thing I can think of that would explain why Gemma and Mark are so important. I kind of wish I didn't realize this at this point in the script, because I still got a decent bit to go through. So if at any point it sounds like I'm contradicting myself later on, it's because I am kind of rewriting this section now on the fly, because later on I am going to talk about what I think they are doing. So yeah, unless Cold Harbor relates to Helena taking over Gemma's body, I don't know what it is. Another reason why Mark could be important when it comes to Cold Harbor is that the numbers could have something to do with memories, or Cold Harbor itself has something to do with memories. So the reason why he's very important is because he is close to Gemma, and that connection is able to help him locate the scary numbers, i.e. memories. Maybe Lumen has more people down there that are connected to the other macro data refiners. In the script, before I had that revelation, I wrote for Helly, it's probably someone from her family. But it could also be related to Gemma's memories if they are planning on putting Helena's mind inside of her. Again, assuming that's even something they can do. I don't know. I still think Lumen's endgame has something to do with some form of mind control, even more so now. And what we saw this episode could just give another route to it. Instead of getting as many people as possible working at Lumen so they could replace the Audis with the Innies, a perfect Lumen cult member, I think they're going to get as many people as they can severed under the guise of, hey, you never have to feel the bad things about life ever again. Let cure take your pain away by passing it on to a version of yourself that only gets to go to the dentist. Any aspect of your life you don't like doing, welcome Cure into your mind and let him save you. That I think is messed up on 3 levels. One, obviously being the very culty aspect to it. Enslaving someone to have their entire existence to be sitting on a plane for you and nothing else is kind of insane. Not to mention that it's still a part of you you're forcing to only experience that. I'm still thinking about the thing I just tripped on while recording the video, because I was sitting here like, oh, why would they want to put Helena inside of Gemma if she's healthy? But we don't know if she is healthy or not. I guess it's possible she could have some form of terminal illness. And that's why Cold Harbor is so important right now, because they don't know how much longer she has. So they need to get it finished so they can save her mind by killing someone else. Anyways, I think the pregnancy innie is the saddest scenario they had in the show so far. Imagine going through labor and that's the only experience you have with your child before you're essentially murdered unless your Audi decides to have another kid. Your whole life is just like days around giving birth. Think about the attachment the innie version of that lady made to her newborn, and that's the only interaction that she's ever going to have with them. She will never see them grow up. She will never see them again. She will never see anyone again. It's a horrible thing to do to someone who just gave birth. Justice for this lady's innie. That kid isn't even going to know the name that she wanted for them. The second reason why it's messed up is because all the things that Lumen want to get rid of are just life experiences. You can't just avoid the pain that happens with life because it makes you feel bad. You can't just skip sections of life. Didn't you guys watch Click? Doing so is severing your humanity. Flying may suck, but what Lumen wants to do is so much worse. If you watched my video on the pilot, you know I would never get severed, so I am coming from that perspective. If you are somebody who would get severed, would you do it to the extent that Lumen wants? Because doing so to the extreme that's in this episode is not healthy to you or your innie. Hey, that whole running away from pain thing has been in the show's DNA since frame 1, eh? God, this show is brilliant. Honestly, we should have seen the extent that Lumen wants to sever people in season 1. Because again, avoiding pain has been a part of the show and is a very culty thing. I think that avoiding pain aspect of it is going to be Lumen's way to get as many people as possible severed, and then to Kool-Aid all of the Audis and make everybody full-time innie Lumen diehards. The next line here is talking about how I think they're still going to try to do body snatching, and that maybe relates to how the Egans are going to achieve immortality, but I'm kind of really convinced they're going to do that with Gemma right now. All I know is that this episode was really good, and it's kind of hard to gather my thoughts about it in this format. Usually I record these on the Sundays after the episode, but I have to record and upload that Daredevil video, so I'm now recording this on the Friday the next episode airs, which made it harder to write this. I just feel so bad for Mark and Gemma. I really hope she's able to get out, because that reunion hug is going to hit so hard. Anyways, the next episode is only 37 minutes long, so I have a feeling it's going to be a bit of a slower one. That's fine. This episode was so sad, hard to watch, and amazing that I kind of just need them to slow down a bit. I have a feeling this next one is going to be my least favorite episode of the season. I'll let you know in like 5 or 10 seconds. I haven't started editing this yet, so I do not know how long the transitions are going to be. A little bit before I watched this episode, someone messaged me saying that people told them that this season was disappointing, which I found to be an absolutely insane take, especially after last week's episode. Just to be sure it wasn't me, I looked up the show on IMDb and season 2 reviews are higher than season 1's, excluding this episode. It has the lowest rating out of the entire series. After watching it, I kinda get it. I don't hate it like some fans do, but I wasn't vibing with it as much as others. I have 2 issues with it, none of which are really about the content of the episode. Because the show is written by brilliant writers. It kind of felt like a B-plot stretched into a full episode. Well, I guess not even a full episode because it's the shortest one in the series. Only by a few minutes though. I think what makes it worse is that one of the previous record holders for the shortest episode of Severance was the season 1 finale, so it feels like nothing really happens in this episode, which is why I say it's like an extended B-plot. It builds up to a big reveal, but if you cut half the episode and splice it with another one, you get the same point across without losing much. The issue is that there's no room to do that. That last episode was too hectic that a Cobel subplot would feel so out of place. Can't do it 2 episodes before because Mark needs the chip flooded, and it can't be within the next episode because her side quest needs to be done by then. It's the one time I felt like they put themselves into a corner pacing wise, and it really doesn't help that this season is 1 episode longer, making it feel like filler even more. Another thing that made this episode a little off is how it kind of feels like spin-off bait, introducing this town, these characters, and alluding on a backstory to an important side character screams, would you watch a young Cobel show? For the record, yes. I don't remember the term for this type of episode. The last time I saw one, it was in that episode of Stranger Things everyone hates. This episode is way better than that one. There are things that I liked here. Seeing what Lumen did to this town was super cool. I liked hearing how they operate outside of the one building we know. It seems like they set up these sites that they use as scouts for high-end talent. And it really explains why there's a child working at Lumen, because I believe it's the same program. We also get to see how people who believe in Kira's vision talk. This one lady's dialogue I really liked for that reason. She has downed so much Kool-Aid. It's the first look we've really gotten of someone that's this obsessed with Lumen outside of the building, and it's really showing the power they have over people. The drama in the episode was good too. I enjoyed every minute Cobel was looking through the house and talking to the people there. The reveal that she made the chip was insane. At no point did I see that coming. To bounce off my theory about replacing bands in people's brains, I wonder if the chip started as a way to save her mother before Lumen hijacked it, or a way for Cobel to cope with her grief. Maybe she wanted to forget the pain, much like Mark. Lumen probably killed her mother so they can manipulate her, right? That also made Helena's line about overestimating her worth hit a lot harder. Assuming she knows Cobel made the chip, even if she doesn't know, I would love to see Cobel's reaction to that line now. It also explains why she noticed the signs of reintegration in season 1 and was so important to the severed floor. So yeah, it was a whatever episode. I liked what we got across the board, but it being its own episode made it feel worse. Worry not. This was a slower episode that was very much needed, especially because we're heading into the penultimate episode. This episode served to get everybody in the positions that they need to be in for the finale, while also including some good character moments. So I'm just going to go over each character and see where they are. First off, Dylan. I feel so bad for both Dylan's and Gretchen. That whole dynamic is so weird. I understand why every person feels the way they do in this situation, and there's no real solution that can make everyone happy. Them kissing is cheating because Dylan's a different person. Even if he's in the same body and reminds Gretchen how Dylan used to be, doesn't mean it's right. Can you cheat on your partner with a younger version of them? Yeah, and it's sad watching all 3 of them go through it. One thing I found interesting is how this hard confirms that my perception of innies was wrong. Before, I believed they would be completely different because they didn't have access to their memories. So I guess how severing works is that it keeps people closer to their outies than I thought, and the differences really come from a lack of connections that you've made with people, whether they're positive or traumatic. While I find that psychologically less interesting, considering that one of the main themes of the show is running away from trauma, I'm alright with it. It's better if that's how it works. In fact, you can see the similarities between both Dylans and how they react to what Gretchen told them. They're both like, fine, I'll quit. One, because he's paranoid that his wife would cheat on him with himself, and the other because he will never get to see his family ever again. They both had different reasons, but they came to the same conclusion. Like, dude, did they have to make him propose? That made it so much sadder. At least it led to a banger match cut. What also confirms how blurred the lines are between innies and outies is what Dylan said to Helly.
And if we're so different from our outies, then how come we couldn't tell when you were gone?
Irving could.
Mark couldn't.
That was a great scene. And Helly did catch on that Lumen only let him see his wife to manipulate him. But sadly, he's too depressed to listen. What a sad arc for Dylan this season, man. Going into the finale, Dylan has quit, so I'm not really sure what he's going to do. I saw some people on TikTok saying that the elevator actually went down. Rewatching it, I'm not sure. I think this other shot was supposed to be someone else coming down. Next up, Irving. Whatever connection that Irv and Bert made on the severed floor has very clearly had an effect on them. Much like how Audi, Mark, and Helena did have some chemistry in that one scene, but like there's no way Audi Mark would ever pursue anything. That connection is the only reason why Bert would have done anything he does in this episode. And I'm guessing the reason why Bert thinks he's going to hell is because he drove people to their deaths for Lumen. He doesn't know what happened after they finished driving them, but it's safe to assume that they're not around anymore. Oh, he definitely abducted Gemma. And the connection is why he wants to save Irving. He knows that Lumen is onto him and how they get to people, so he's able to help him escape. Also interesting how Bert's reason for getting severed relates to the trauma of driving people to their deaths. And the scene at the train station was another sad one. Forging any relationship on the severed floor seems to lead to nothing but pain. I guess that's what happens when you only exist weekdays from 9 to 5. Irving is heading into the finale heartbroken and alone on a train. I hope he meets up with whoever he's been talking to on the phone. I really want to know more about those people, man. Up next, Helly. She doesn't really get a whole lot to do this episode. Again, there's that really good scene with Dylan, and she gets the directions to the elevator, but that's like really about it. She asks Milkshake about Mark. For the whole episode, it felt like it was just leading to her getting to the elevator. But then her father shows up. I have no idea how this is going to go. We know very little about Mr. Egan, so I can't predict how he's going to act. I also don't know how Helly will react in this situation. Honestly, she kind of sums it up perfectly.
What the fuck?
Going into the finale, Helly is heading to the secret floor, but first she has to deal with her father. That cold open between Helena and her father was weird too. Mark, in my opinion, has the most interesting setup of the four. Considering two of the characters are kind of just leaving, it's not really that hard. Him finally meeting up with Cobel led to some good scenes. There's a very fun dynamic at play between the two, because she wants to help and he does not trust her at all, which I don't blame him. She was helping hold his wife prisoner while pushing his innie to finish a project that would lead to her death. Devin, once again, is an amazing voice of reason for Mark. He is not in a mental state to be making correct decisions right now, even ignoring the whole reintegration thing too. And she is doing a good job of keeping him grounded. Seriously, Devin has been locked in all season. Hearing that Cold Harbor will kill Gemma could support the body swapping theory I've been cooking up. It really depends what Cobel means by she's already dead. Could it be literally dead? It could be more figuratively that the Gemma Mark knows is dead. Or it could mean like brain dead. Who knows? Could also be that the body is dead, but the mind is fine. The rest of those scenes exist to get them into their endgame. Innie Mark talking to Cobel and getting info on Cold Harbor. How she got into the birthing center too was very interesting. While the stage is set for all four characters going into the finale, there's one more guy I want to talk about. Milkshake's conversation with Drummond was amazing. It really seems like Lumen is starting to lose control over everybody under a certain level, and I am here for it. And he tells him off in the most Milkshake way too. Oh, I loved it.
Devour feculence.
That is a redemption arc that I think is going to be a fun one. Honestly, I would love a redemption arc for everybody who's under a certain level of power in Lumen, especially because they were all indoctrinated at a young age and were able to get themselves deprogrammed. And we did get a very little sneak peek at that programming in this episode. It wasn't a whole lot, just a ritual and a little tease at what the next step is. But I think what little we see of Miss Huang this season was done to show how cult proceedings work within Lumen. So when redemption arcs start start to happen, we understand what they went through. Oh yeah, and I'm now just remembering, people seem to think that Devon works for Lumen? I personally dislike that more than the holodeck theory. Nothing she has done throughout the entire show has indicated any loyalty towards Lumen whatsoever, and I'm pretty sure it's just based off of the fact that she wanted to call Miss Cobel. They would have to do so much work to make a twist like that believable for me. I doubt she is. It would honestly feel like a major character assassination for her. But I'm the guy that's been sitting here for the past month saying that they're trying to do some form of mind control, so like, who am I to judge? The stage is set for the finale, and I think it's going to be a good one considering the episode is an hour and 15 minutes long. I really hope they don't do another cut to black cliffhanger at the end of this season, because I don't think I can mentally handle waiting 2 years again for another season. Don't do me like that. I mean, go ahead, do it, because I know it's going to slap, but like, don't do me like that, please. If the finale is anywhere near as good as last season's, I imagine you've been waiting the entire video to get to this point, so I'm just going to stop wasting your time now. That was one of the best episodes of television of all time. I think the surprising part about it is that it didn't feel like it was an hour and a half long, because it was such an amazing ride the whole time. Following what I did with the previous episode, I'm going to look at each of the 4 main characters and look at what they did. First off, Irving. Irving did nothing this episode. Outside of the previously on Severance, we did not see him at all. I would have liked to see him get off of the train and call those people he was talking to, just so he's in the episode. Due to the 0 screen time he gets, we don't really have an idea of what he's going to be doing next season. Safe to assume he's going to make contact with those people ASAP, but like, I wanted to see him. Dylan continues to be the GOAT. I was kind of surprised when he showed back up on the severed floor, and it led to one of my favorite moments in the show. I might end up saying that a lot this episode. Howdy Dylan wrote a beautiful letter, and I think it really spoke a lot to his character. It shows how much respect he has for his innie, which is something that I feel like we don't really get to see in the show. I'm happy they were able to work through that whole kerfuffle. They both went through a pretty traumatic experience and came out the other end stronger. It's funny how in 2 finales in a row, Dylan's role is to make sure Milchek doesn't get through a door. And his final line in the season felt so good.
Fuck you, Mr. Milchek.
I thought Helly was going to make a run for Exports Hall after she finished talking with her dad, but instead we got a very interesting conversation between the two. He reveals one of the reasons why Helena kind of hates who she is. After a certain point in her life, I feel like she straight up never felt any love. Like, her family stopped caring for her, and she wasn't able to make a serious connection with anyone until Mark. Hell explains why that breakfast scene in the last episode was so awkward. But Helly having Kier inside her and becoming the daughter that Mr. Egan wanted really shines a light on Lumen's perception on pain. Because while he says that he sees Kier in her during this moment, ultimately I think the Kier he is seeing in Helly, the Kier he used to see in Helena, is just Helena without as much trauma, because she was able to find love. Much like how Gretchen said Dylan's innie is what Dylan used to be like, but he's attributing it to seeing Kier inside of his daughter instead of what it really is. But this is what Helena would be like if she had people that truly cared for her. When Mark first saw Helly on the severed floor this episode, I thought they were doing the Glock Schlupen again, because it would be a little risky to send Helly down there and not Helena, but considering she knew the directions to Exports Hall was under the keyboard, it's no doubt that it's Helly. Them imagining a life together outside of the severed floor was also one of my favorite moments in the show. It was nice seeing them going through what it would be like to actually be together, like going on vacation to the equator. And her speech to all of the innies was so good. It seems really likely that an innie uprising is going to happen next season, and I'm excited to see that play out. Sadly, I don't think it can go well, and by Lumen's design, the innies can only experience pain. I'll get to that later though. How she ends the episode though, I'll also get to later after I talk about Mark. The scene where Innie and Outie Mark talk to each other might be one of my favorite scenes of all time. It does a good job of confronting the dilemma that both Marks find themselves in, especially because this would be a suicide mission for any Mark, because the only way he would be alive again is if his Audi went back to the severed floor. They both deserve to be happy, and there's not many avenues to achieve that. No one knows how reintegration works, so it is entirely possible that it would be way more Audi Mark than any. And how they get mad at each other in the scene too, it's very real. What I found to be absolutely brilliant was how it was shot. In both wides, they're on opposite sides and there's a chair set up to represent the other. Going into the episode, I was hoping they would have a scene where they would talk to each other through recordings, and doing it like they did was so free, but it doesn't change the fact that it works perfectly. Some really fun cuts between them too, and it led to us finally finding out what Cold Harbor is. Spoilers, it has nothing to do with body snatching or immortality. Honestly, what it is checks out, but I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. Every file that Mark finished was creating another innie inside of Gemma that they would put through the tests we were seeing in episode 7. Cold Harbor was the final test. Afterwards, they would kill her, I'm assuming to extract the chip, which puts Mark on a timer after finishing Cold Harbor to save Gemma before that happens, which led to some very stressful scenes, including killing Drummond in the funniest way possible. I remember thinking before the switch, hey Mark, maybe you should move the gun a bit just in case you twitch when you go down the elevator and accidentally blast his neck. All of which built to Mark seeing Gemma again for the first time. Although it's a brand new version of Gemma, but still. A few episodes ago, I said the reunion hug between these two was going to go so hard, and I was correct. It was a rare moment in the show that was pure happiness, followed by a very awkward elevator ride for Miss Casey and Innie Mark. And then Mark is able to get Gemma out, but he stays behind to be with Helly. Freeze frame to end the season for some reason. Every interactions between the different versions of Gemma and Mark were very good. Cold Harbor being a version of her that has to disassemble a crib is incredibly cruel. Luckily, the chip held up against the severe loss that a crib would conjure up in her mind, and Mark didn't have to see it, but that was so messed up. From what little I've seen online about this episode, I imagine what Innie Mark did is going to cause a lot of controversy. Sadly, I had that choice spoiled for me with zero context the night before while I was scrolling through TikTok, but even knowing throughout the episode that at some point Innie Mark was going to pick Helena over Gemma, it was kinda obvious. He told Audi Mark how much he loves Helly. They talked about spending more time together. It should not be surprising that Innie Mark picked staying alive with Helly over leaving. That choice is going to divide the community. I think it's important to remember that the innies are people too. Most likely, you would make the exact same call if you were in Innie Mark's position. He's not the one that loves Gemma. He's the one that loves Helly. Sadly, I believe the show could be taking a route that there is no happy ending for innies. How their existence is designed by Lumen, realistically, there can only be two good options. Where they reintegrate and they are truly one, two equal halves sharing the same mind. Or they somehow stick the innies inside of like robots or something so both of them can live freely. Screw it. End the series with Audi Mark ending up with 20 plus Gemma robots. Again, more on that in the conclusion. One person I believe deserves a special shout out this episode is Mr. Milchek. This dude was on the ball until he got locked in the washroom. They made him the performer and stagehand during this whole presentation they were doing. He was killing it with the lights the entire time too. Lumen was aura farming so hard with this. He probably set up that creepy ass animatronic of Cure and that sick Final Fantasy painting all by himself. He was schmoving during the dance scenes too. And how he runs away from Dylan after giving him the letter was so funny. Milchek has had a pretty interesting season. Like, Lumen has treated him very weirdly all season. I don't remember if I mentioned them, but those paintings they gave him were insane. I believe he deserves an Emmy nomination based off of this episode alone. I'm really curious what's going to happen with him next season because he is surrounded. Better start that redemption arc soon, Milkshake. things are not looking good for you. Honestly, each character is going into next season in an interesting state. Dylan is on the front lines with the Innie marching band about to beat up Milchek like it's Hundreds of Beavers. By the way, please go watch that movie. And that whole music segment was so good. And the idea that Lumen has like no security down there, but an entire severed marching band is so funny. I love how incompetent this company is. Irving, I guess, is going to be making IRL contact with his phone buddies. Audi Gemma is finally free, and Innie Mark is running away with Helena? Okay, so for the entirety of the episode, there was a 0% chance that it was Helena cheering on Mark. The map reveal, like I said, was a huge giveaway for that. If it was Helena, she wouldn't have known the map was there and would have gotten him to Exports Hall in a different way. But after she leaves MDR, we don't see her going to the escape hall. We only see her when she gets there. I don't know why, but at most I feel like Helly would tell Mark to go be with Gemma, or like at the very least say something. Helena, I think, would convince Mark to run through the halls with her. Much like last time it wasn't Helly, so much of my theory relies on the fact that I can't prove that it's not Helena, just because she seemingly teleports. The main hole is like, why would the switch happen and where exactly would it have? Like, someone else would have to do the switch and then communicate with Helena that Mark is about to leave with Gemma. Maybe her father or someone else did it after Mark first met up with Gemma, because with Mark still down there, they can use that to put pressure on Gemma. Hey, we have your husband, person with the most important chip in their brain. If you don't come back, we'll kill him or keep him here forever. But honestly, I don't think I want to commit to thinking it's Helena. That could be because I called it once before and I don't want to be the boy who called Helena. And while I see the signs that it can be true again, a part of me thinks they wouldn't do it again. I don't know. I'm not sure. Damn, I was also wrong about the positive pregnancy test to end the season. I saw some people saying that getting Helena pregnant was a goal of Lumen's. I don't think so. I think it's just a byproduct of them fucking. But I also guess enough time hasn't passed. But man, I gotta get to the conclusion because this video is hitting like, what, an hour and 10 minutes at this point? That was such a good episode. Oh, that was such a good finale. I am relieved that they didn't drop the ball with the show and delivered another fantastic season of television. My fears for season 2 have thankfully been proven so wrong. This team knows what they're doing and they popped off. There was a lot of really good standout episodes. Both Marks went through fantastic arcs. I'm happy Innie Mark is fighting for his right to live and gets to be with the one he loves. I really wish I didn't get that spoiled, but I guess that's what I get for being so deep into Severance TikTok and not realizing the episode was out. Everything they did with Helena and Helly was very interesting this season. Irving, I wish we got more of him. I think that's my biggest issue with this season now, looking back at it as a whole. Pretty much every week I wanted to see more of what he was doing. Realistically, all he did this season was be sad about Bert, save Helly's life, meet up with Bert on the outside, be separated with Bert again before ending up on a train. His character was really enjoyable to watch. I just wish we got more of it. The reintegration stuff led to some of the best moments in the series. I love Devon all season. She is so good. Rickon is still here, I guess. Cobel's arc was really interesting. I wish it took up less time. And what they're doing with Milchek, I feel like is going to lead to a lot of very good moments next season. And I'm so happy it ended the way it did. They could have cut to black before Mark made his choice. And while this is still a cliffhanger, at least it's not like the one they did last season. Don't make us wait 3 years again, though. I cannot handle that. And I feel like it would be very bad for the show. One thing I never bothered talking about until this recording session is Severance's presence on social media. I believe it started around episode 4-ish, but I started to get a lot of Severance content in my social media feeds. Like, obviously this is a popular show, but at no point have I ever seen this many people talk about it online. It truly exploded on every single one of my timelines. And I think it's because more people are starting to watch the show than ever. I've been in the camp of telling literally everybody I know to watch Severance since I finished the first season. And I think a lot of people who watched it did the same. And once the season started to come out on on a weekly basis, I might add, we wouldn't shut up about it. And the people we were telling to watch it finally got around to it. I think because they wanted to join in on the conversation as it was happening. It became something they didn't want to miss. And they knew it would be a good show because their friends were praising it so much. If it aired all at once, I don't think that would have happened because there wouldn't have been a conversation to join in on. Weekly releases is the best way to watch television, don't at me. There were so many little things that I talked about or thought up between episodes. Hell, it even happened while I was recording. And all of that wouldn't have happened if it aired all at once. I personally think I would have had a way worse viewing experience if it wasn't weekly. The final points I want to make about this season relate to theories. So my theory about Cold Harbor being a body snatching thing is wrong. But like I mentioned in the intro not that long ago, stop checking the time code, I believe I cracked the code on Severance. How, you may ask? It's easy. The show uses something called good writing. In a well-constructed story, everything revolves around the theme. That's something I think you need to be factoring in when theorizing. Because what it is at the core of the show. I high-key hate that at no point did I factor in the importance of running away from pain in theory crafting until I saw Gemma dismantling the crib. When this is brought up in the first episode.
I just feel like forgetting about her for 8 hours a day isn't the same thing as healing.
And Cold Harbor is the ultimate trauma test. Why would there be body snatching happening? That doesn't relate to running away from pain. Why would Gemma be a robot? Something that was a very popular theory after season 1. That does not relate to running away from pain. Why would Devon be working for Lumen? How does that relate to her running away from the pain that she felt after Gemma's death? Why would they have a holodeck? How does that relate to running away from pain? God, holodeck theory is so stupid. Because think about it, everyone we know who is severed is running away from something. Mark from the grief of losing his wife. Dylan, we're not sure what. I'm assuming it's some health issue because in episode 2 he talks about the importance of getting a job with health insurance. There must be something there that caused him to act different enough for Gretchen to notice. Irving, we know pretty much nothing about his personal life except that he has no one. I don't know, maybe the loss of his father caused him to get severed. Bert's severed because of the sins he committed for Lumen. Helena did it to help the company, but she very clearly hates who she is, has never felt a real connection with anyone before severing, and that pain she was carrying caused her family to not care for her. And everything Gemma had to go through on that floor caused her some pain, both physical and mental. Even the one where she was just writing letters. It was hurting her hand. And in Cold Harbor, she faced something that was mentally devastating if she wasn't severed. Everyone we saw with a very close connection to Severance was running away from some pain. Even Miss Cobel, or was forced to encounter pain. Keep in mind, one of the main culty aspects around Lumen involves Cure taking away everybody's pain, because they would rather people sever themselves from their humanity and owe their life to them than feel a little sad. If you cannot link Lumen back to that core concept of avoiding pain, you are looking in the wrong direction. Even with my own theories, while I do believe that they're trying to get as many people severed as possible, I don't know if the body snatching or the immortality thing is true anymore. To be fair, you can argue that running away from death by becoming immortal is a way of running away from pain, but replacing waves in people's minds hasn't proved to be possible. I still think Irv got his any reset though. At the bare minimum, that is definitely possible, right? Like, you can stick 28 minds into one person. You telling me you can't just reset one of them? I still think there's more going on than trying to sever as many people as possible, but right now, I don't know what it could be. And given the innie revolution that's seemingly starting, I imagine Lumen's plan will fail. You can't force people to live their whole life at work or the doctors. It's inhuman to run away from life like Lumen wants people to do. So there must be another sinister thing going on, but with the context we have now, I don't know what it could be. All I know is that it needs to relate to the main theme of the story. Should have known Devon was going to be the most base character in the show when she said that in the pilot. Still don't know why Gemma's blood's important though. there's something there. Wait, was Lumen stalking everyone who had miscarriages to see if they would be the perfect test subject? Dude, that's so messed up. At the bright side, at least Lumen is hella incompetent. The final thing I want to talk about is the innie revolution and how it's kind of doomed to fail. Unless true reintegration is possible where both the innies and outies are able to exist in one mind at the same time, they will never have a life. Or if they figure out a way to insert their consciousness into something else. Like, I think it's very fitting that the final shot of the season is Mark and Helly running away from the exit. As the current status quo goes, they can't really exist outside of Lumen. Take what Devin says. Gemma getting out can lead to the end of Lumen. And Mark correctly points out that would be the end of the innies. So like, what can they do? They are stuck on the severed floor, avoiding the inevitable, waiting for a permanent OTC, I guess. Like, at some point, they have to leave, whether they're forced to by Lumen or on their own accord. It's honestly the saddest part of the show right now. They finally started to fight for their right to exist, but much like the central theme of the show, they're running away from the pain of their premature death. They're people. Every innie deserves to see the sun. They deserve to live an actual life. But does that right supersede the outies' right to wake up from an endless slumber that they've experienced themselves? An endless slumber that Lumen can just make them experience at any time, I might add. I don't think any one version of them deserves life over the other. Like, all 20 Gemmas are people too. But the innies are at a disadvantage. They are the ones who can only exist at certain places. I really hope season 3 dives into this topic more because it is fascinating. Maybe after I do a video going into the unaired pilot script, I'll talk about this concept more because I've been thinking about it a lot since I finished the season, and it is honestly what makes the finale so good for me. But alas, this video has gone on long enough. But before I go, I will be posting a poll on my channel asking what format of TV reviews you prefer. Either this one where I go episode by episode before giving my thoughts on the season, or do what I did with Invincible and go all at once. Because honestly, the main difference between these two videos is like the hour where I talk about each episode. Like I said, probably for the third time over the last two videos, I personally prefer this format over the other one because it gives me time to breathe with each episode. I truly hope you all enjoyed this format because it was a blast to make. Honestly, it's likely I'll continue to do this route in the future unless you all really prefer the other format. This season was definitely a step up from the first, and I am so excited to see that innie revolution. It's just a shame that it's likely doomed to fail. Do you agree? Think I'm an idiot? Comment down below. Like the video if your two favorite shows are airing on TV right now. Also star a guy named Mark, and subscribe for more content. Follow me on other platforms if you want. Take care, guys.